Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very special guest, Daniel Tweedall, a serial entrepreneur with over 15 years of international experience. After starting his career with Procter & Gamble in brand management, he has followed the path less traveled, working, investing, and advising across multiple product and service-based ventures. Daniel loves tackling big ideas, most recently returning from Vietnam, where he co-founded Toucan, a craft beverage company. Now, in the US, he finds himself a founder and CEO of Tweeds, a personal publishing platform for the next generation of humanity in the age of AI. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks to be here, man. Been looking forward to this, and I will say up front, really big honor and milestone. This is my first long form interview, so very excited to talk with you. And it's a double Daniel. I don't know if you have you interviewed a Daniel yet on your show.
Not yet, but it is true honor. It goes both ways.
All kinds of milestones. So this is a big day for everybody.
Speaking of milestones, let's get right into the heart of it. We have
Do it.
AI, which is completely new for all of us in one sense. It's finally gone public. It's been in the backwards of technology for at least 15, 20 years, but it's having intersections in industries we hadn't necessarily predicted. You currently find yourself within the publishing world. Could you kind of explain what's happening at industry at large?
Yeah, there's a lot happening. So what I would say as an overture is that I mean authors are very clearly embracing both independence and technology in this new age. There's just some fast facts like self-publishing. This is all in the United States to focus on. That's up over 260% just in the last 5 years. That's over 17x category average growth rate versus total industry. Audiobooks have exploded since the pandemic. That category alone is over 2 billion in annual sales. So over 35% just in the last year. And the number of audiobooks that US listeners are enjoying is up 20% just in the same time period. And with social media and author branding, like if you've been at all on TikTok, you've seen the hashtag book talk. That hashtag alone has over 200 billion views, which is the entire planet watching all of that content 25 times over. So these are real industry tailwinds. But with AI, the biggest disruption that I feel no one is talking about with authors is a disruption to purpose. Authors have the same basic core motives as any of us, but purpose is really the driver. Um, and I feel that's because human beings are inveterate storytellers. We perceive, process, and share information in a narrative format. And there's just to me it just seems a bit silly to cede one of our defining gifts or fully to AI. I think that's a great mistake. It's a sentiment shared by the authors that we're working with, and it's not that myself or authors are Luddites. We're just seeking a proper balance to where it's helping them in what they want to do, and it's not taking from their purpose. And so, kind of, I always like to boil things down into market forces. Daniel, you're a Notre Dame guy. I'm an '04 alum. I studied marketing and anthropology, markets and monkeys. There's absolutely a correlation because markets are just simply collectives of people that are taking similar actions. Behavior always predicates market. And so, if you look at the publishing industry, there's five primary forms of capital. Okay, and I mean that broadly. There's economic, human, social, intellectual, and symbolic. You think across lower and higher order benefits. And what Tweeds is doing is we seek to reform across the board. I feel this is an industry in great disarray and in need of a very serious makeover. And so we're trying to lead that charge.
Love that. Great commentary. You mentioned book talk. I myself am a big fan of BookTube, the book community on YouTube. I found some of my TBR, to be read list from there. Some of them that I've gone through, I must say, it's great criteria. Lovely books come off from there. But you're
Yeah.
right. The authors are separated in some sense from the works, but now we have AI creating works that are authorless. Or is AI considered an author in itself? Is this something we're going to be seeing within the next few years where generative books, romance, comedies, the typical tropes are now written by artificial intelligence, and we
Yeah.
might have our favorite artificial intelligence, or where do you see that going?
I mean, first of all, I don't think anybody has the conclusive answer to that. I think like acknowledging ignorance. This is a borrow from Socrates. Socrates, to paraphrase, said, "One's knowledge is defined by the extent of one's ignorance." I mean, they have to be mindful of like
Mm.
where we are. It's relatively early in this game, but already, I think AI as a total phenomenon, not even like exclusive to like publishing or any particular industry. My feeling again, markets and monkeys guy. I see self-evident signs of a mania period, and I think that makes sense given that this is. I think we're all wrapping our minds around this still, but we've in fact entered a new epoch. We've been born into a very specific sliver of time. We've entered a new corridor of civilization that is one way, and everybody's trying to figure this out at the same time. And so I think a lot of questions still need to be answered. As far as what we're seeing with AI and publishing so far, I mean, it's kind of what you should expect at this stage that technology, as revolutionary as it is in a relatively rudimentary phase. So, the LLMs, the large language learning models, that I add an extra L in there, you know what I mean? The LLMs, they would write at what I would call sort of like a middle school level at best. I don't think they're capable of achieving much depth or sophistication, but that's today. It's interesting. I was at a regional book fair just over the weekend. I was talking with authors, more importantly, listening to authors about just what's going on in their world and their sentiments, about AI. And I think everyone has a right to be optimistic in the publishing space about the proper and ethical use of AI. I also feel that there's a little bit of a shields up, like heads down in the sand moment happening right now. Because the first wave of this has come out, and they're like, "Well, we can do better than that. It's an annoyance and a perturbance, but like, can't do what we can do. We're okay." I have on what I consider to be very strong authority, from a very elite team of advisors in this space that like, that is not going to be the case for too long. And so I think we have to take a position on this proper and ethical use of AI in the industry and really across the entire arts and humanities. But also, again, it comes down to like, where is that line? I just think that storytelling is the domain of human beings. I think AI is a tool and a technology. And like any tool or technology, it can be used for good and bad things. I own a hammer. I can build a house. I can club someone over the head. So it's like just because you can do something with a new tool and technology doesn't mean you should. And we've entered this entirely new ethical foray that we're being forced to answer what I feel are a lot of existential questions. With Tweeds, that really is at the core of the problem we're solving. Entrepreneurs are always have to solve problems in the market, but arts and humanities, there's commerce, but it's more than a market. And this is more than a business. I think we have to have a very deep and careful reexamination of what it means to be human. And we have to come up with some parameters that we choose to value human works by across the arts and humanities, authors are no exception.
You mentioned the hammer metaphor, and it reminds me of another I heard somewhat time ago, referencing the use of the calculator when it was first introduced into the school system, right? It
Yeah,
was viewed as a hack, as a cheat,
right,
as elitist, not allowed, right? It wasn't real math. And
right.
in one sense, perhaps all cultures have resistance at the first introduction of a new concept, a new idea. I think that's very human. You mentioned markets and monkeys. That's very primal, perhaps. But then after a long time, and we're through the education system mostly, I couldn't imagine a higher academic math class without a calculator, right? It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool being used for the proper things. It's how we got to the moon. It's how we're traveling, exploring the depths of the oceans, right? Without these calculations made by calculators, there would be no way to get there. Perhaps
Right.
an interesting view of artificial intelligence is the same way, right? We're still figuring out how to use it, but in the ideal best case scenario, it'll be used as a tool. The thing is, calculators themselves aren't ethical or non-ethical. AI can be questionably ethical or non-ethical with the creation of either some form of image that seems like someone did something they did not. This could enter into huge credibility concepts or even plagiarism. With all this in mind, how do you see AI or Tweeds in the approach of crediting?
Did you say accrediting?
Crediting. The fact that when AI is involved in the work or it's having influence, ethical, non-ethical, how is that being sourced, referenced to, clarified?
Yeah, that's one of the big box of worms on this. I mean, let me build on your calculator analogy. What's a little different, more than a little different, about artificial intelligence versus like even your TI-86 kind of calculator is that this is a self-learning, self-doing, self-evolving technology. I mean that's really the inflection point that creates the conundrum, right? That's what makes it very different from other tools and technological advancements. I mean, this ain't the Gutenberg printing press. This is a very, very different kind of technology that requires, I think, a very different and deeper examination about usage and then ultimately protecting author's purpose. On accreditation, I mean, that's one of the questions we're out to solve. I can tell you from the front lines, kind of where folks are at presently, ethically and legally. I mean, you have news like the New York Times had sued OpenAI for copyright infringement. Authors like George R. R. Martin, I mean, he joined together with 17 other authors, also suing OpenAI and saying, "quote We are here to fight." They recognize that these are tectonic plates shifting below their feet, and the creative class is a long and systemically abused cohort of society. Creatives have been long taken advantage of, even though, I mean, I would argue the arts and humanities are one of the greatest public utilities to ever exist. You don't have to be a member of the creative class to benefit and be enriched by the arts and humanities. The arts and humanities are really a form of shared destiny. And so folks are taking this seriously, but how do you accredit? I mean, that's at the core of the question that is just, we're not there yet on answering it. I can give you one insight from said earlier referenced regional book fair. Talking with a gentleman, really successful, best-selling author. He's shopping one of his children's book series to Netflix. He's broken into some real success. And he shared a fascinating insight with me, and I've never shared this before actually since the thing last weekend. He said that, with the Writers Guild in the contractual arrangements, like where they're starting is they're letting AI kind of do the 80-20, probably not even 80-20, but call it like the rough draft. Let the robot do that, and then you just bring in human editors at the end to put the polish coat on. So it's worked on by people. But is that a human story? I mean, I would argue no. I don't think when a meaningful amount and type of content is generated by AI in telling a story, I think that negates it from being a real story. I mean, at least again, my definition is that storytelling is a uniquely human gift. In my mind, there's a very real difference, Daniel, between content and story. And so everyone's figuring this out together. The important thing is like to give authors like a path forward. I mean, that was a clear sentiment from the book fair. Is they again they're open to a balance. I mean, they want to be successful. They want the same things we do, but they just don't want to lose their purpose and their voice and their role in all this. I mean, I think authorship is one of the most important fields there is, but they don't feel that there's a venue for them right now, frankly, or that anybody's been talking about it. And that's not surprising. I mean, if you look, open the news, any website, any day, when you look at all the AI news, it's always like jobs, 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 business applications, business technologies. That makes sense in a venture capital, business development sort of like path to opening up market. It makes sense that a lot of those applications are commercial focused to start. But there's still all these changes happening with the impact of artificial intelligence moving into, and I think very strongly, arguably infringing upon the works of human creatives, and yet no one's really talking about this. Like you hear it in blips. There's a writer's strike in Hollywood. They worked something out. We've never heard anything about it again. You hear about, the challenge of trying to decipher, was a graphic image, generated by a human or an artist. It's a murmur, but like there's no real path to a clear solution. And so, Tweeds is focused on authorship and supporting independent authors. We want to go very deeply into solving those problems, but it's just very early in the game. A lot of unanswered questions. I think that underscores the importance of we have to take a position, both practically and ethically, on how we figure all this out.
Yeah, it's early stage. You are undoubtedly a pioneer within AI industry as well as the publishing industry, specifically self-publishing as Tweeds defines itself.
I wouldn't
Earlier, you
I'm
talked
throwing my
about,
hat in the ring. I wouldn't call myself a pioneer at this stage, but that's very flattering.
oh, well, I firmly do believe that. In many ways, it's leading a charge because it's asking questions that most people aren't caring for at the moment because perhaps we're being too passive or we don't realize the magnitude. There's other industries similarly in the creative realm, such the one that comes to mind is the music one, where royalties and creative and beats and all these things, where can AI fit within it, right? Where is this the use proper? Where is it not? And so you're totally right. You speak of the creative class, the creative economy. There are people within it that are being taken advantage of. There always has been, but AI is not benefiting them any more than perhaps it could. And again, earlier you mentioned this idea of the line, and the line is drawn in the sand, which means it can be moved back, moved forward, moved around. Where was the line drawn now? Where would you say?
Very broadly, the conversation right now, and it very much is a line in the sand. We're trying to draw a line in the concrete eventually. But yeah, it's sand right now. Um, Much of the conversation is around intuition and sort of the creative spark. Right now, AI just sort of reflects to inputs. It doesn't really have that like core creative capability, unless like fully let off the leash. It will always be that way because it is kind of ultimately, some on a basic level, some form of input output, right? But again, that's today. You can't stop progress and you can't stop profit motive. And that's my concern. I mean, Tweeds is a for-profit company. I mean, I always laugh. I mean, the wooden bracelets, don't let it fool you. I'm a capitalist. I mean, I believe in the free market. Very far from a perfect system, but it's done a lot of good. I do think that our free market is going to need a facelift of some kind. Um, a a post semi labor economy shift, because I mean I can see a world with 30% unemployment in my lifetime. I just can't. I think they are slow selling the hell out of all this disruption because these are going to be like a level of it's going to be a level of disruption that folks are not accustomed to, and panic doesn't serve any good. So I mean, I understand, but like there is a lot happening with it. The thing is, it's like what are we really talking about with like job and economy disruption? We're talking about money. We're talking about policies. These are complex things, but ultimately they're sets of man-made and agreed upon rules that can be revised and revisited and whatever. I mean, it's complicated, but you can figure that kind of thing out. And I'm confident like civilization will. I'm not a dystopian guy. You can take someone out of a job, which you can't take as their purpose. That is a clear path to dystopia. And when I talk to members of the creative class, I mean, kind of, you commented on my non-traditional career path. I think that's aptly described. I mean, I've worked from North America to Southeast Asia and in between. The whole aha moment for Tweeds, Daniel, came when I was in Saigon. Saigon is a global cosmopolitan city. Americans don't know much about Vietnam because we don't, talk about it. We're embarrassed about the war and all that. They're very over that over there. By the way, they really just want everyone to get to know them. Some of my closest friends and I have business partners that are Vietnamese, and they're awesome. But Saigon in particular is a global cosmopolitan city. Like folks from all over the planet are buzzing in and out of there. I mean, it's a major hub, and so I had the privilege of getting to know people from everywhere, countries all over the place. Hell, I met a guy from Iceland. Thought there was like 10 people in Iceland. So, and what I discovered very broadly, but also like uniquely specific in sentiment to the creative class. When you talk to members of the creative class from everywhere on the planet, without exception, universally, they share three sentiments. They are very optimistic about this technology and its role in our future. They're curious about where this is all going to go. Deeply scared, deeply scared. And there is no more powerful motivator than fear with humans. Markets monkeys guy. So when you talk with them, they're wanting and yearning for that balanced solution. They don't see it in their circles. The conversations go along the lines of I'm paraphrasing, but it's like I have 5 years left to live. Not just make a living, a consistent, reliable living, but the purpose. It's like unchecked. It's like it's going to infringe upon their work to the point that it steals their purpose. If you don't have purpose, you don't have anything. That's what we're fighting to protect and correct.
Fighting for purpose, fighting for storytelling. I love this idea that human beings are naturally storytellers.
We all are.
It's within us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's innate. It's something that we can't
Why we
help
are what we
but
are.
do.
Storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah, and in one sense, everything is a story. Every item that we've created, every day that we've lived, every hello, every how are you, there's a story that's told behind it, right? The story that Tweeds is writing is quite a good one. It's very optimistic, as you said. It's hopeful and it's resilient because it's facing the questions that no one else is considering. Speaking of stories and transitioning a little bit away, you mentioned also some nonprofit work in terms of Tweeds and its involvement within the global broader community. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, very new. I'm keeping a little bit of it under wraps for now, but since
All
you
right,
got
all
the
right.
first sit down interview, I'll give you the teaser. Okay.
I'm honored.
So separate, independent from Tweeds. Tweeds is just a classic like C corp for profit regular business. Um, we are in process of forming a separate nonprofit entity, and it has a much more expanded mission vision. So to say it simply, I mean like the mission and vision of Tweeds is let me start with the mission. The mission is to increase human authorship works and value. The vision is to protect and advance human storytelling. We're just laser focused on supporting independent authors, beginning in the U.S. and ultimately internationally. This non-for-profit, to be named, has a much bigger role, and really it's a thing. My partners laugh when I say this. They know I've definitely got my eye on the ball, but I'm actually the most excited about the nonprofit. The nonprofit has a mission of determining the proper and ethical use of AI across the arts and humanities, because that question and answer will differ. Well, it will be similar at a certain level, but differ ultimately by discipline. And I think that level of conversation depth needs to be had. And with a vision of celebrating and elevating humanity, as if this all wasn't lofty enough. If you'll permit me to dream a little bigger, go back to the Saigon aha. Like seeing people from all over the planet universally having the same sentiment and again, going back to markets and monkeys, what I would distill that down to, Daniel, is that I feel that we are experiencing a humanity level zeitgeist moment, as big as that sounds, but it's entirely believable. I mean, now, firstly, what is zeitgeist? Zeitgeist is when people are thinking, feeling, and acting the same way. And again, behaviors predicate markets because markets are collectives of people taking similar actions, chain through, right? Zeitgeist is talked about, somewhat, it is absolutely one of the most powerful market forces there is because it predicates everything. We look at all the economic and the businessy stuff, but zeitgeist is you're talking about the highest of highest order thinking level, and that supersedes all. It's happening to everyone the same way at the same time. This is what makes this really interesting because, we all come from different places, different things going on, said simply, right? But we've all crossed this starting line together at the same time in the same place, everywhere. And everyone is trying to figure this out. The job stuff, again, that's tricky, and that can be solved, and that's where a lot of the emphasis is. But the arts and humanities, like, as I mentioned, like, I view that as a form of like shared destiny because the arts and humanities are really about what we choose to take of our purpose and manifest into being around us. It surrounds us, it influences us, it directs us, both directly and indirectly. And so we have to get that right. I mean, like, there's just, I mean, you look at the AI content that you see online today. I mean, right now you can kind of tell, right? You look at the picture, the video. Like, why does the guy have 6 fingers? Why can't AI figure out the 5 fingers thing? I don't get that. Like, we pretty universally we got 5 fingers. And I don't know. It's going to figure it out. But anyway, like, you can kind of tell, right? That's today. I just a world with an endless deluge of content, not meaningful work, but just content across the arts and humanities is is going to be soulless. It's going to deprive us of meaning in ways that we can and can't even express fully, but we feel it, and that feeling connects back to that shared purpose. There's just a universal human sentiment and connection to the arts and humanities and their importance. People want answers to these questions. They're just not seeing a way forward. All of the conversation and emphasis is on profit motive, commerce, strictly based applications. Yet along the way, these AI applications and the different facets of the arts and humanities are happening. No one's really involving the creative class. They don't have a seat at the table. I feel strongly that the creative class needs a champion right now. And so with Tweeds and both the forthcoming nonprofit, we're seeking to play our part.
A thought has just occurred to me, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on it. Is there a deeper root problem behind the AI situation and perhaps what it may do, in the sense that we have the creative class in the creative economy, but side to that, we have the consumer economy, right? And simply put, members of the consumer economy enjoy scrolling. They have no problem with it. They value content and disengagement from their regular lives over the value that that content may provide for them. And so, in one sense, pushing back on AI, as long as AI produces, the consumer economy is okay, right? Because they're getting the content to feed the brains. And I think that's a very large societal problem where we're losing the value behind the stories, behind the actual thing being communicated and told. But taking a deeper look, not just at AI, but at humanity itself, would you say you've seen this trend where consumer economy is gaining pace and it's losing the distinction between the value and just content?
I think that distinction's already there. I would never inherently equate content with value. Content is effectively an expression of volume. Volume is not value, and typically speaking, less is more. That's an inherent problem in the entire content economy that's happening right now. I think there's just too much crap out there.
Mm.
Different problem for a different day, but Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, right? It boils down to quality over quantity. Like, I don't, going back to books, I feel, and every author that I've spoken with and we're working with at Tweeds feels, without exception, that a world where you go on to Amazon, and some of these online marketplaces are trying to combat this to a degree, but I want to stress again, it's early in the game and never underestimate the power of profit motive. Okay, but like they're trying to combat it to a certain degree of this is already happening. Like, I mean, because I'm working here on my office rig. It's all looking at, where I'm online and keywords and all that kind of thing. I'm getting served up like pre-roll YouTube ads for this kind of crap where it's like, hey, did you know you can start your own ebook business and you don't have to have any talent? All you have to do is like dump in prompts and then our super duper system, pumps it right up to publishing and you make easy money. There's already folks trying to do this and grasp at the straws with the rudimentary level of development that AI is at with the language learning models. And those works predictably suck. And there's only so many listings on a page. Not to mention the fact, Daniel, that like just in the United States alone, there are over 11,000 new books published every day,
Wild.
just in the United States. So think of that number of books just in the U.S. Then ladder that to every country around the world annually. Then ladder that to the reservoir of works that are out there. I mean, it's a vast ocean. It's always been challenging to be an author. I don't think they need any more hardship. In fact, we should be helping them in this time again, like celebrating and elevating humanity. And so, channels like Amazon and others with like the middle school level, written books, they're fighting that. They're trying to fight it in terms of like trying to sift out what's written by a robot, what was written by a human being. But make no mistake, profit motive. Like part of the reason they're sifting that out is those books create enormous consumer dissatisfaction and do not lead to repeat of sales. So Amazon has a clear capitalist profit motive to get that out of the way because it's interfering with their core business, right? Fast forward to when artificial intelligence can write pretty damn good books and do you know more many things across the arts and humanities, right? Like, where are these companies going to stand in that landscape? I like to take things back to fundamentals. I think people markets are complex, but also very predictable. And I think that's why again it's so important that we take a position on this and we develop like a true systemic solution.
Totally agree with everything you've been said. That number absolutely shocks me. As a writer myself, I have dreams, of course, of one day publishing or entering this world, asking the questions that should be asked. But 11,000 books a day is ludicrous. When would someone have the time to read that much? And of course, perhaps the majority of people go to curated lists such as the New York Times, or they have their own specific publishing house like Penguin. Eventually, perhaps Tweeds will have its fit within the space. But that's absolutely wild. So much content
Yeah.
being produced, and there's a question. There's a true, sincere question behind content and value. Uh, Loved all your opinions regarding that. Switching a little bit now to your mind, you as an entrepreneur, you as a pioneer in all this in one sense. You mentioned in one of our earlier discussions the idea that if you believe, you bleed. What does that mean?
I didn't say that in this, but for your listeners, there's always like a little like a pre-interview segment. You kind of just chit chat informally, and that is something that I do say because I believe that. Yeah, I mean this is me distilled. If I believe, I'll bleed. I'm an all-in guy. I don't like to pussyfoot anything. Um, I love tackling, like you said at the kickoff, like like really big ideas. The whole premise of your show is like is a perfect fit because I am a very innately and persistently curious person, I love to ask why, and I also love to ask why not. You hear about
Hmm.
the importance of why. I don't think people ask why not enough. That's the other side of the spectrum ultimately. But I mean, yeah, we're just trying to figure all this out. We're all trying to do some good while we're here, and I believe there's a solution at hand. I don't think it's just going to fall in our lap. And I could give you a zillion markets and monkeys reasons for that. I've kind of, you can thread that back to many of the comments I've made. But I think it's important to take a position. I think it's important to start now. I don't think we're out of time to develop a proper systemic solution. I just also think we don't have any more time to dawdle around, and so we're trying to get at it. And yeah, I mean, uh, like kind of coming back to your question. I mean, when folks ask me, you're at a meet and greet or whatever, oh, what do you do? Like booze and books. Just kind of my pitch line. And why not? Very, very different industries. Products best enjoyed separately. Yes, that's a canned joke. But are there connections and parallels? Absolutely, absolutely. Both very human engagement, enjoyment spaces. And at the end of the day, it really just boils down to people. Everything in markets boils down to people. If you understand people, you understand markets.
People. I love people. One of my favorite words is human. I think it carries value in the stories, in the anthropology, there's science, there's faith, there's religion. All of this and so much more makes us human.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of something else you mentioned in one of these previous discussions in preparation for today. And I think this is something very human. You said, be kind and open to creating unexpected moments of joy. Absolutely brilliant. Where does that come from?
You're a good listener, man. You ask great questions too. That's a part of being curious, right? You got to ask great questions. That comes from my mom. That's just something. Actually, oh, hey, okay. I'm just doing this off the cuff, but I'm in my office. This is I keep this on my desk. Um, this is The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. This is my favorite book. This copy is also my favorite book physically because this is the copy that my mother read to me countless times when I was a kid. I asked her to read it all the time. I think there's just timeless lessons about how to treat each other and be good to each other. Um, I do read above a kindergarten level. I'll have you know, but yeah, like I get that from my mom. It's really easy to brighten somebody's day. It can be a passing smile, a meaningful thank you, I appreciate you, kind of thing. Giving proper credit when it's due, and then even kind of like surprising people by letting them know that you notice and that it matters. And I think it's not just a good way to treat each other. I think it's just a great way to live. I mean, like even just purely for personal reasons, like it's a lot better to be happy than sad, And so
Yeah,
I
100%.
think everybody can. It's easy to improve your life and surroundings just with little things.
Unexpected moments of joy. Not happiness, but joy. There's a big
Yeah,
difference in that.
yeah, that's right.
I think I can relate to a lot of what you said. And I'm also very happy to report that I read above a kindergarten level. That said, one of my favorite books does happen to be a fable, specifically Aesop's Tortoise and a Hare. I think there's
Oh,
so much,
love them
yeah,
all.
phenomenal. All his fables have so much proof of wisdom. There's something deeper, again, something more human, I think, in all of them. But specifically that one, Tortoise and the Hare. And my mother's always told me this, and I carry it with me everywhere I go. But no matter how many times you read it, the tortoise always wins.
Why is
And
it?
that, yeah, it's extremely wise. And it's a good reminder because we live in a fast paced world. Throughout our discussion, we've talked about economies, right? An economy is always moving 24/7. We might think the market opens from 9 to 4, but there's markets that we can't even comprehend that are always moving, right? These economies at large, there's not just the monetary one, but the creative one, the consumer one, the attention economy, right? There's so many moving parts around us. With so many moving parts, I'm curious as to why you've chosen to do the work you are doing. What's your why?
I think so much about the business and our authors. I don't usually reflect inward. Why am I doing this? Said simply, I think it's imperative. Um, I love it as an entrepreneur for like the bigness and the complexity of it. I love chasing down big stuff. I'm a sucker for a great contrarian play. You know, to just quickly to connect that to Tweeds, the AI that we're developing is locally stored, closed source, regenerative. In other words, power efficient, does not infringe on copyright, and is learned and trained up on you directly. And the AI is meant to serve as like a personal assistant or a muse. But what it will not do, and I will never budge on this, is it will not write the book for you. I'm fundamentally against this concept of what I call like robo books, where it's like, drop prompt to, ebook at minimum, or whatever, other forms and channels to go through. I think that's a crummy literary space. It's definitely bad for authors. It's not something I want to experience as a reader. I've always been, why am I doing it? I mean, I've always been innately fascinated with storytelling. Like that I guess that is the through line for me. I've always been fascinated by the power of storytelling. Cool thing about storytelling, in speaking and written form, is that it really is a form of magic. It's kind of a form of spell casting, because the right combination of words, in the right order, with the right tone, inflection, punctuation, context, etc., can directly change one's perception and therefore change one's reality. And so, I mean, with words, they call it spelling. I mean, it's not the derivation of the word, but you know what I mean. And so, like, it's just it is this form of magic that we all wield, and it's not just the craft. There is a human spirit element to it, that I don't feel can be replicated ever by a robot. What we have to take the position on and be safeguarded against is in a future where the books are written really well by robots. And I think authors need to, that's the shields up, head in the sand, kind of down in the sand kind of thing. Like, I think we need to be vigilant about this, because we're all creatures of habit. We've seen the prequel to this movie, so to speak. The prequel to the AI movie is social media. When this technology came out, people enthralled and entertained, and look at all the amazing things. Then the dust settled a little bit, and people started to say, you know what, there's some negative externalities to this. Like, maybe we should like think about this a little more. Like, maybe we should, pump the brakes a little bit. Well, it's already out there. Ships left the dock, and look at all the cool stuff. Look at the shiny things, right? I mean, Daniel, we all use social media. I mean, you have to in business, right? And there's some cool personal applications. I would argue strongly that social media is a massive net negative to society. And AI could be that on exponential steroids. If we're not careful, and if we let this go to a point where people just accept the new norm, get into the habit, a consumption sort of mindset instead of a purpose mindset, that kind of thing can be difficult, if not impossible, to correct. We have time. I just don't think we have any more time to waste. And so we're taking action.
Let's get after it. That's right.
Yeah,
Winding down, I have two more questions. The
sure.
first is you've already mentioned one book, but do you have any other book that's been absolutely essential, or you can say, wow, that one, it changed my thinking. It had a deeper effect than I was expecting. And you'd recommend perhaps one of our listeners read.
Well, one of my favorite all time books. I recently reread this was Joseph Campbell's Power of Myth. He's got multiple books. They're all extraordinary. That guy is very special. Should be read. Should be studied. Um, that kind of again, I suppose, like speaks to my sort of longstanding interest in storytelling. It's all about the role that stories play in shaping our lives and perception and the power that holds. So Joseph Campbell's Power of Myth, absolutely recommend without hesitance. Um, did you ask me for a second book? Should say one or two?
If you want to share two, go for it.
Oh, I mean, geez. I'm not putting this in the same league, to be clear, and it's a bit of a pop business book, but I do read a lot of business books. I'm a total business junkie, unabashed, unabashed business junkie. I have a problem, and I'm okay with it. But Atomic Habits is really good because it's like habit formation really comes down to focusing on small important things and then just building that repetition out. And it's pretty extraordinary how you can reshape yourself if you just take a practical approach to building habits. And so I've just started that. I can't give you a verdict on it. Heard lots of great things. It's been awesome so far. But yeah, so there's kind of a business and a pleasure and the spectrum on book recommendations.
I love that. Very human, of course. We have our serious sides and a little bit more lighthearted, sincere side. Atomic Habits is a phenomenal book. Absolutely agree.
Got it?
100% your thought. Yeah, it's in a way, in many ways, after Proverbs, it's one of the books that really started me off on this curiosity journey and just made me realize
Oh
if
wow.
behind the power behind intentionality, right? Behind
Yeah.
taking the small things, working through them, and then letting them compound upon one another.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
story that you Right, the compounding effect. The other thing that you mentioned, that the power of myth, it reminds me of this idea of something being true in one sense, but in a different sense, we know it's not. Specifically, Romeo and Juliet. Is Romeo and Juliet a true story? I would say yes. But of course, we know it was penned by William Shakespeare, right? But in so many ways, the trope of star-crossed lovers, of you do anything to be with the love of your life, right? In so many ways that is true. And
Yeah.
so I do agree there's a definitive, largely human aspect and power behind myth. I can't wait. I'll add that one to the list. In
Oh yeah.
closing, lastly, we both mentioned our mothers and the huge influence. And I'm fascinated by the idea of Mama said. It doesn't necessarily have to be something your mother told you, but what's that one thing you've carried throughout your life that perhaps a mentor, a parent, a grandparent said that you said, wow, I wish the world knew this as well?
Hmm. Well, first, I want to make sure I give my father some credit as well. He had more than a slight hand in my upbringing. Family is just foundational. Um, that's an area that I'm very blessed, and I have a wonderful family. I also have a younger sister who's awesome. We're very close. There's an expression in our whole family that Tweedalls take care of Tweedalls. We're a small but mighty clan, and family is very important in where I'm from. But God, like one thing to pass along, only one. Not to reprise, but it is a guiding mantra of mine is to ask why not. I don't think people ask why enough in the first place, but there's something about the inversion of why to why not that I feel like the why not gets neglected, and um, why not is I think one of the most important questions you can ask, and when you know you have a really great opportunity, Daniel, is when the answer to that is like strikingly simple. They're super like long and short story. Like when I started my career at Procter and Gamble, I worked on a brand called Pure Water Filtration. P&G has this nonprofit arm in the company called Live, Learn, and Thrive. They had a technology under that nonprofit arm that brought clean, safe drinking water to families in developing countries where plumbing is not even on the radar, kind of thing. Could go on forever. Guy that founded that is Dr. Greg Allgood. He's an incredible human being, and like the for-profit and the nonprofit side weren't working together, even though it was all about clean, safe drinking water for families. And we had the technology. It even used the name Pure. I was like, why are we not doing something with this? And I could go on, but like the answer was just unbelievably simple. It was just kind of like it came down to like a no duh oversight kind of thing. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like we can overcome that. We went on to do that, and then we gave 1 million kids in Kenya clean drinking water for life just in that one initiative, and it spawned a lot of other nonprofit initiatives modeled after that in Procter and Gamble globally. A lot of good came from two words: why not? And so that was an really formative lesson for me that really stuck with me in business and just in life. Like ask why not, because sometimes the answer will surprise you in in obvious and non-obvious ways. So
So truthful. Why not? At least now you know. I think
yeah,
there's a huge second part to that.
no downside. No downside in
There's no
asking
downside.
why not.
Right. There's some doors that you knock on and they might not be opened, but at least now you know.
Yeah,
And there are certain chances that no one else is taking, so why not you?
why not?
Why not? Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. Markets and monkeys, booze and books, artificial intelligence is all included quite complicated, but today's discussion was phenomenal. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, man. A really an honor and a big milestone for me personally and professionally. Really appreciate it, Daniel.
Likewise, goes both ways. Stay curious. God
See
bless.
you.
Bye.